Bill's speech is project number 6, vocal variety in the competent communicator. It is 5 to 7 minutes long. The title is Why Recruiting is the Best Profession. Bill has been a professional recruiter since 1981 and is known nationwide as the recruiter guy. In his speech, he tells us why he loves his field. His objectives today are to use voice, volume, pitch, rate, and quality to reflect and add meaning, use pauses to enhance his message, and use vocal variety smoothly and naturally. Let's hear it for Bill, please. Booyah!
Under each of your seats is a little gift from me. And you'll see that it's decorated exactly the way you'd like it. It's an air guitar. And at the end, you'll be able to practice with your air guitar with me. Mm-hmm. Many times over the past 20 years, maybe even 25 years, people have asked me, why do you have a passion for recruiting? And that's a good question. Because in the recruiting field, fewer than 1% of us make it 10 years. Well, where else can I make the impacts in companies and in people's lives than I can make as a recruiter? Think about that. For instance, in 1986, I was recruiting for an IT position for Marriott Corporation. And they were looking for a candidate with 1 to 2 years of experience. I ran an ad in the Washington Post, got a number of resumes, did phone screens on them, and one candidate stood out. And it wasn't because of his programming experience, it was because of his mental toughness. You see, Ben Pham on his resume worked for the U.S. Embassy in Saigon, South Vietnam. Ben Pham came in the next day to interview with me early afternoon. And he sounded like he had a really good technical background for only 8 months of experience. But he had a story, and I wanted to listen to his story. And so after I teched him, I said, will you show that you worked in the U.S. Embassy until 1975. Now it's 11 years later. How'd you get here? How'd you get to this place? As Paul Harvey would say it, this is the rest of the story. Ben Pham worked at the U.S. Embassy, couldn't tell me what his position was. He was scheduled to be on the last helicopter flight of Vietnamese from the roof of the Saigon U.S. Embassy. He left his wife that morning with the intention of getting on the helicopter. His flight was boarding. He turned around and he couldn't do it. And he went back home. Somebody else took his place. When he got home, his wife was both happy and upset because she viewed this as their opportunity to get to the U.S. About a week later, they found out that the North Vietnamese were coming into town and they were searching for U.S. sympathizers and sending them to jail or worse. Ben Pham's wife said, "We're a target. You have to go to the U.S." They found a freighter. He paid for his ride to the U.S. You can imagine the port when everybody was excited and they're saying, "We're going to the U.S.!" They got on the freighter. They sailed about 500 miles out into the Pacific Ocean, and the freighter broke down. You can imagine the panic, the stress, the smell and maybe even the hope of the passengers of that freighter. Luckily for them, after several days, a U.S. naval warship came up and picked them up. They interviewed everybody, found out Ben Pham worked for the U.S. Embassy, and took him to Norfolk, Virginia, their port town. When he got to Norfolk, he picked up several different jobs, was going to school part-time, and got a degree in computer science. And I said to him, have you been able to communicate with your family? And he said, not very often. I said, how are they doing? And he said, I'm able to send money through the black market every so often. So when are you going to see them again? He looked at his watch and he said, I'm going to see them in 3 hours because they're landing at National Airport in D.C. Ben Pham interviewed at Marriott Corporation and got the job. And he was really excited. And over the years, he and I kept in touch. 6 years later, I get a phone call from him. He said, the school just announced that my daughter was selected valedictorian of her class. And he said, you helped her get here. So one of the things that I do every time I've helped a candidate make a match with a client, and they've started, is I sing a song. So reach under your chair, pick up your air guitar, stand up, and join me in my favorite song, and just follow along, because I don't use all of the words. So you got your guitars ready? I Feel Good by James Brown. I feel good. I knew that I was.